Hi friends, my name is Dolly and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is September 3rd, 2025, and this is my first video. So let me hope this is straight. So you can tell that I'm not accustomed to speaking on camera and I'm actually reading from my script. There might be times where I'm reading off the script. I feel like there's no better time than now to get out of my comfort zone and to share a bit about myself and my passions for art. I am currently 30 years old and I've been reflecting on my life recently, especially on my career as a graphic designer. I've been working as a graphic designer, mostly as a contractor for different companies for about 5 years. I used to enjoy it in the beginning, and I would say I'm pretty decent at it, but then I realized that I don't have the same passion that I once had when I first started in this marketing advertising industry 5 years ago. Around January this year, I found myself, as you could read, I might mention that in the thumbnail of my YouTube video. I found myself drawing Doctor Doom from Fantastic Four and Storm, which you probably know from X-Men, together as a romantic couple, which I'll talk about later in this video. And once I started to draw them consistently, I realized that I want to leave this corporate 9 to 5. I really want to leave my career being a graphic designer to pursue my childhood passion, which is illustrating and creating stories. The reason why I pursued graphic design as a career was because I felt it was the closest creative job where I can still be financially secure. And as long as I could remember, drawing and creating stories from my own character were something that I always loved to do. But I always viewed these passions as a hobby, and I didn't believe it was possible for me to make an income from them. I received my first sketchbook from my art teacher in 4th grade, and unfortunately, I cannot find that sketchbook to show you guys, so you just have to take my word from it. But I remember that my teacher wrote a note behind the front cover, and it says something along the lines that she hopes to see my work in the art museum one day. And that was a time I felt like I was being recognized as an artist. And I really believe that one day my work will be, in fact, be seen in an art museum. So that was a moment where I took drawing very seriously, and eventually my parents would buy me art supplies and more sketchbooks. But between middle school and high school, I taught myself how to draw by reading art books from my local library and looking at different drawings online. Once I started to read fictional books, I believe that was the moment where my imagination had broadened. And at the time, I mostly read mystery, suspense, and romance. And I also read manga, which you probably know, like Naruto, Bleach, Inuyasha, Case Closed, and Full Moon wo Sagashite. I also stay up late on a school night to read stories on a website called fanfiction.net. And if you never heard of fanfiction.net, it is a website where you can read stories written by fans based on a movie, video games, anime, comic books. It's like there's a lot of categories you can read from. And I mostly read stories from the movie Sound of Music, which I will talk about later because it's like one of my favorite films growing up. And I also read fan fiction based on the live action version of the X-Men films and Naruto. And I will admit, I have read stories that I wasn't supposed to read as a child, but nevertheless, it had inspired me to write my own stories. And I've never got a chance to like publish a story at the time. I did, however, publish one story after high school, but that was only just one story. So I mostly was like writing scenes that I saw like playing in my head. And because I read a lot of romantic stories on fan fiction, I started to create my own story and design my own characters and pretty much describe their potential love interests. And I was a child who daydreamed a lot, and I was emotionally invested in my own characters and, of course, other fictional characters as well. My first fictional crush was Kakashi, so I drew him quite often. My attachment to him was so deep that when I saw that filler episode where he accidentally kissed a woman named Hanare, I remember like being so heartbroken and crying for like 3 days straight. And even though it was just a filler episode, but I felt like it was just as real as if I was actually watching an actual episode and not a filler. But outside of all this, I was also a child experiencing chronic low self-esteem, identity issues, and depression. And part of it was growing up believing that I was the ugly duckling in my family. And I remember, like, especially from elementary school and middle school, students will go up to me, or they will tell me, or they will ask me if I am a boy or a girl. And when I told them, like, well, I'm a girl, of course, they'll be completely shocked, genuinely shocked. And they said, well, I thought you were a boy. And, you know, and being mistaken as a boy constantly also made me feel like I wasn't pretty enough to be a girl. And I had that mindset for a very long time. And part of my identity issues that I had stemmed from being born in a church called the Unification Church, which was founded by Reverend Sung Myung Moon, who actually passed away back in 2012. And if you don't know who Reverend Moon is, he claimed to be the Messiah, the second coming of Christ, and he said he was anointed by Jesus to complete his unfinished work. And my parents had met through arranged marriage in South Korea, and me being born in the church, I was considered a blessed child, or what they say, a second generation, because I was supposedly born without original sin, which everyone else who wasn't born in the church had original sin, which supposedly original sin is what Adam and Eve supposedly had inherited when they fell in the Garden of Eden. And my childhood revolved around this religion. My family had pictures of Reverend Moon and his family and his wife plastered around the house. We had like a tradition to sing holy songs. We had to also bow down to Reverend Moon and his family. And also we had to read one of his books or any of the church books. And on top of that, every 8 days we had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning wearing our Sunday clothes, and we were pretty much doing the same thing over again. And also we did that on church holidays as well. We also had to attend these Saturday programs called the Go program, and me and my siblings did not want to go, but we had to go. I was also really insecure about my skin, my body shape, and also my hair, because there were not a lot of people in the church who looked like me. It was mostly Asians and white families. And of course, there was a few families who were Hispanic and also mixed races. And sorry, I'm flipping. And I remember the church really emphasized the importance of studying the Korean language, the culture, and the history so you can understand Reverend Moon on a deeper level. And of course, I feel like there's nothing wrong if you are passionate about a certain country and its culture and history. But being told as a child to study those things, to understand a person that I barely know, it felt like I had to take on the identity of the church and disregard my own roots. And I was born in the United States, but my father, he's from Brazil, my mom's from Jamaica, and I never felt connected to my own ethnicity. I don't know much about my family history. I'm not really close to either side of my parents' family. And honestly, I could go on to talk about how the church had negatively affected me and my family, but all I can say is that I'm glad that I'm not part of it anymore. And during the time where I was living with my parents and I had to follow the church tradition, art was pretty much a way to kind of escape with all the problems that was going on at home. And until it became to a point where life became unbearable and my depression just skyrocketed. And that happened once I hit junior year and senior year of high school, around that time. And I started to develop an irrational fear that adulthood would be terrifying. And I didn't know what I want to do in life. And I felt I wasn't ready to take on new responsibilities as an adult. My friends and my teacher were worried about me, and even my mom noticed how much I talked very negatively about myself. I was recommended by my art teacher and my guidance counselor that I should get therapy. My parents didn't believe I needed one, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I don't need one, or maybe all these feelings that I had about myself will go away on its own. And looking back, it never went away. It gotten worse once I started school. And like I said before, I didn't know what I want to do career-wise, but I had a passion for art. So I applied to many art schools, but I ended up attending Mason Gross School of Art at Rutgers University, majoring in visual arts. And I ended up borrowing student loans at the time to live on campus for the first 2 years of college. And I did that because my friends had encouraged me to dorm, and I also thought that it would also be a good opportunity for me to make friends on campus and to participate in clubs and activities. In the first year of college, the first half of college, I had some good experience, but I also felt out of place and I was experiencing homesickness. So at the time, I was living with roommates and we got along well, but I didn't like staying on campus. So my parents would drive over 40 minutes to pick me up from school every weekend. And I did all right at school until my grades started to drop around by the end of my sophomore years. And as a result, I was on academic probation. The funny part is I don't remember exactly like what led to me having low grades around that time. I cannot remember why my grades started to drop during that time. And the only reason why I remember is because I found my grade script and I was also reading email exchanges that I had with some of the staff at school. So that's the only reason why I remember at that time. But anyway, I was on academic probation, and instead of continuing school, I decided to take a leave of absence, and I was hoping that once I come back to school in a year, I will regain some motivations to focus on my studies. But my intended plan seemed to backfire once I came back from school, and I felt so much worse than I did compared to my previous semester. And I hadn't contacted any of my friends at college when I took the leave of absence. So when I came back, we were not as close as we used to be. And day by day, I felt more alone. I felt unmotivated. I was feeling really empty. I enrolled in classes that didn't really interest me at all. And I didn't find myself connecting with the students in my classes or with the teachers or with the professors. And at the time, I was commuting on train instead of dorming. So I felt even more disconnected to the school. And I almost regret coming back. And I didn't understand what was the point of all this. So I ended up falling into bad habits. I was skipping classes. Without telling my professors. I avoid doing my homework assignment, and I was very depressed. And it was a point where I was considering ending my life because I didn't understand like what was the purpose of being alive. And so, what I ended up doing was I ended up dropping out of school in the middle of the semester, and my parents were disappointed in me. They were upset, and they wanted me to at least finish the semester, but I couldn't do it. And once I did that, my neighbor, the members of the church, found out very quickly that I dropped out of school, and I felt embarrassed and ashamed because I was the first in my family to attend college, but I ended up being the one who dropped out of it. And I refused to talk to anyone from my high school because I didn't want anyone to find out what I was going through. But something else interesting that happened during the time I started my sophomore year at Rutgers, before I took my leave of absence, I came across a community on Tumblr who ships Naruto and Sakura. And after reading several posts about these two characters and why they ship them together, I started to ship them myself. I was persuaded by the posts. And the reason why I bring this up because that was the moment where my drawing started to level up very quickly compared to my previous drawing. And I was also teaching myself how to color on Adobe Photoshop, which made my drawing pop more compared to the time when I was sketching on paper. And of course, being part of an active community had motivated me to draw them consistently. And you could tell how much I enjoyed drawing these two characters together. The community, of course, had died a bit after Naruto Shippuden had ended. And of course, Naruto got married to Hinata and Sakura got married to Sasuke. But despite of the drama, the shipping war that happened at the time, I'm actually glad that I was part of the community because being part of that community had motivated me to draw more. And a lot of people really like the way I interpret Naruto and Sakura. And I'm surprised that I still managed to make good art despite what I was going through at the time, which I felt was like one of the lowest moments of my life. Fast forward, once I decided to drop out of school, I decided to work in a retail job for a few months. Actually, it was a seasonal job. And then eventually I transferred my credits from Rutgers to a community college. And from the community college, I graduated and received my associate's degree in liberal arts, and then transferred again to New Jersey City University. I then graduated with a bachelor's degree in fine arts with a concentration in graphic design. And since then, I've been pretty much working at different corporate jobs as a graphic designer. So it's been about 8 years since I drew a fictional character on a consistent basis, like how I drew Naruto and Sakura, like for a very long time. And once I saw, I'll bring it up, and I'll probably show a picture so you have a clearer view. Maybe I'll do that. But once I saw, oh my gosh, it's upside down. Once I saw this cover, which is a Doom variant cover from Storm issue number 1, drawn by Marco Cecchetto. And that was a moment where I got into Marvel Comics. That was the moment when I started to ship Doctor Doom and Storm together. And I feel this is a full circle moment, like I said, because I feel like I'm like reconnecting to my childhood passions of drawing fictional characters and write stories and coming up with different ideas. And I felt like I was reconnecting to my younger self. And, I find Doctor Doom's backstory and his character design, especially the way like different artists draw him, fascinate me. And I think I can say I have a crush on him, just like the time I had a crush on Kakashi back in middle school. And I remember after watching a YouTube video about Doctor Doom's life story, which I might share a screenshot somewhere to give credit. That same night, I saw Doctor Doom in my dream. And then since then, like I've been having constant dreams and they were pretty vivid. And sometimes you either say something to me, he will show me something, or I will see something that relates to him. And it surprised me a lot because I don't remember having vivid dreams with other fictional characters. And I was also kind of mad because like I was desperate to actually wake up in my dreams. I wanted to become lucid so I can experience them with awareness, but it never happened to me. So one particular dream that stood out to me, and it also showed me the reason why I started to ship certain characters together. In that dream, I remember being inside of a library and I remember pulling out 2 books. One book, I believe it was related to The Sound of Music because at the back cover, I saw George Von Trapp. And if you never watched The Sound of Music, I will recommend watching it. It is a classic movie. You can watch it on Disney Plus if you have Disney Plus. And George Von Trapp is one of the main characters in the movie. He is a retired naval officer and also a father of 7 children. When his wife passed away, his demeanor changed. He became cold, he became strict towards his children, but then all that changed once Maria, who was a nun at the Abbey, was sent to him to be the new governess to his children. And eventually the children started to warm up to Maria, and George had like a change of heart and he ended up falling in love with her. So anyway, back to the dream. George Von Trapp's name appeared in one book, right? And then in the other book, I saw Victor Von Doom's name, and which is Dr. Doom's name, in case you didn't know. The weirdest part is that I also saw Victor Von Doom's name appearing in the other book, right underneath George Von Trapp's name. So I remember waking up and I was thinking like, why did Victor Von Doom's name appear in both books? And initially I thought my subconscious mind was just telling me, hey, these 2 characters had Von in their name. But then I believe my subconscious mind was showing me that these 2 characters were similar in their core essence. And that might be part of the reason why I was drawn to them. And so both of these men actually were shaped by tragic events, and that made them pretty much cold and stoic to the people around them. Like George in the movie, he stopped bonding with his children on an emotional level after his wife passed away. And of course, according to the movie, um, it's been said that he's been running the house like he's like a captain running a ship. And anything that reminded him of his wife, like music and singing and laughing, wasn't permitted in the house. And, with Victor Von Doom or Doctor Doom, he tragically lost both his parents at a young age. And depending on which version you read on Doctor Doom, he either completely scarred his face or he got a scratch on one side of his cheek, I think, after an experiment went wrong when he was trying to build a machine to contact his deceased mother. And, time and time again in some issues, Doctor Doom expressed like he needs no one, and that he's the only befitted ruler of mankind. And it was kind of feel like based on some of the issues I read, like that, like he pretty much lost his like humanity, and his first and pretty much his only love was Valeria, and he sacrificed her for power too, which is also tragic. And even on top of that, I think he still loves her, and he also regrets that he did that. And I find that Doctor Doom to be like a very tragic figure, and he's also, well, of course, he's also a villain. And who doesn't have someone that he truly loves, like how George found Maria. And I also recognize these type of men, because growing up, my father was also emotionally distant, and and also violent as well. After rewatching the film again, I realized why I was such a huge fan of The Sound of Music. And I didn't realize at the time, like back in middle school, because like I had like very limited, outdated, and also unhealthy belief about love. And for for many years. And I think now I can say that I'm starting to let go of these beliefs. And I believe that George Von Trapp and Maria represents the embodiment of the type of love that I wanted to have or wanted to experience. And Maria is one of my favorite female fictional character. And after rewatching the film again as an adult, I realized, like, on top of Maria being such a very beautiful woman, she was also funny. She was also defiant, especially the way she was bickering with George. And at the same time, she was very wise, and she was also nurturing towards the children because she was having such awareness, and she immediately saw why the children was misbehaving. Especially, I think in the movie, they mentioned that before Maria became their governess, they also had previous governess coming in. And I think it was a total of 7. I can't remember. I might be wrong. But she knew that the reason why the children were misbehaving was because they wanted attention from their father. And when Maria when Maria told George, he refused to believe her. But, throughout the movie, she was never intimidated. She was never afraid to challenge the way he was raising them. And even Maria was appalled when George was introducing her to his children the first time. and he was introducing them to her by blowing a whistle, and she was really shocked, and she refused to use a whistle on them. And in one scene, she made play clothes for the children because they didn't have play clothes. George didn't believe they needed play clothes, and when he refused to provide her the materials because she sews, she made play clothes out of drapes, which I found it to be really hilarious. And she also taught them how to sing, and she also plays the guitar. And because of all of that, she really connected with the children. And once George saw that the children were singing again because of Maria and music was brought back to the house, George fell in love with her on a deeper level. And you can see that George had a big change of heart. And, you know, on my end, I never had that type of love growing up, you know? And, you know, at the time, like living with my family, living with my parents, you know, I was just surviving until I was able to move out. Until this day, I still talk to my parents, but I just want to tell you guys like what I was going through growing up. And I think that Storm and Dr. Doom could have a love story like George and Maria, but of course it might be completely different. Of course, I'm not really up to speed with the Marvel comics, but I've been obsessing to make this pairing work, and I'm actually working on a mini fan comic, and this will be my first one because I never drew a fan comic before. And so this will be an experiment for me, and I'll probably show you guys like my progress so far on a separate video. And then I also have other ideas I want to draw and write. So I don't know, I guess you guys will see my journey. But anyway, I realized that I wouldn't have these realizations about myself if I didn't get back to drawing. And now all I want to do is make fan art. I also want to draw. I'm also like working on a graphic novel, my own graphic novel, but I can't really share much with you guys because it's still in progress. And I also, you know, like I said, like I also want to make comics again, and you know, and I feel like this is what my younger self have wanted, and now I'm giving it back to her, and I feel happy, and I really want to continue this. And also off topic, if you go through my social media accounts, I also have been drawing Magneto on top of Dr. Doom and Storm, and well, that side, like how I end up drawing Magneto was actually pretty random. I was basically practicing drawing anatomy from studying professional artists, and I bought the entire issue of X-Men Red, and I picked up one of the issues and I saw Magneto, and I was just, you know, focusing on just drawing like the body structure. But then I end up drawing Magneto, I guess on top of drawing Dr. Doom and Storm, because it's not such a popular ship, and I'm pretty much the only artist on the internet that's drawing them on a consistent basis. So if you remember, I said that earlier that I had vivid dreams when I first started to research Dr. Doom, and I had like dreams with Dr. Doom or anything that relates to Dr. Doom. So, and I also said that I never became lucid in any of those dreams. So right now I'm trying to make a goal to have lucid dreams again, but consistently this time. Because I had lucid dreams in the past, but like it was just randomly. And it was for also a short period of time. Like I will realize I'm in a dream, but then I lose that lucidity and that awareness, and all of a sudden I'm just having just a regular dream. A few days ago, I saw Magneto in my dream this time, so I'm like, oh boy. I'm looking back at it, I'm like, oh boy, now I have another fictional character popping in my dream. In a dream, I was sitting in the toilet, and I was wondering to myself, am I in a dream? And then I saw like an object across from me, and it looked like a golf ball. That's how I was interpreting. It was like a white ball, and I was like, okay, this might be a golf ball. And I said to myself, if I can move the golf ball with my mind, then I am in a dream. If I can't, then I'm not in a dream. So I stretch out my hands and I try to make the ball move, but then I couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden I saw Magneto at the corner of my eyes, and he said, if you could move the ball, he will come for me. And that was the last thing I remember in that dream. So I think that's all. I think that's all with the video. And if you like this video, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more content. Like I said, on my next video, I want to share a bit about what I've been working on with my fan comic, which I really haven't shared on my social media. I only share like pieces of my fan comic, but in the video, you'll get to see like the pages. I'm debating or not to show. I want to show the dialogue, but I'm a little shy because writing isn't my strength, and I do want to either ask a friend or ask like an editor to like review it for me to give me feedback before I post it online. But that's all for the video. Thank you so much if you watched the whole thing, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.